everybody, it's Kira and welcome back to my channel. So today I have my January wrap up. So January was a decent reading month and I read some interesting books and had a lot of rereads, so I'll just get into it. But first off, I have one book that I did receive this month, so it was a Christmas present that ended up coming in early January, but that is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I'm very excited about having this book now. It's just the first book, but I love this series and definitely wanted to own it, so I'm very happy that I got this from my cousin. So thank you, Hannah, for getting this for me. And yeah, so that was my one haul for January, and I'll get into the books that I read. So to start off, I read the entire, is it Folk of the Air trilogy by Holly Black. So that is The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing. And I have such mixed feelings about this series. I have to say, the second half of each book was better than the first half. I feel like, especially in the first book, it was a lot of just learning about the world, which you honestly needed because you're going into this world of the Fae and of this world of fairy, and so you have to like know kind of what's going on in order to like set up the things that happen in the second half of the book. But I didn't really know what this was about going into it, other than I know people really like Jude and Cardan, and so I was mostly reading for that romance / tension of whatever was happening, and also just so that I could know what happened in the series. Again, I think I liked the second book better than the first, for sure, and then I think I liked the third better than the second. I don't really know. Like, there was just a lot of politics, which, like, it's court intrigue, so of course there's going to be a lot of politics. But it wasn't exactly what I was expecting it to be. But I did really like the way that Jude and Cardan's relationship changes as the series goes on is very interesting to read about, and, like, I don't know, just the, like, blatant antagonism in the beginning between the two of them, moving into more of like kind of an alliance and then into more, I don't know, it was very interesting. And I think the other interesting thing about this series is Jude is a girl who goes for what she wants and she doesn't let anything stop her, but it's not just that she's like doing it for like the right reasons. She also talks a lot about how she is trying to gain power because she's felt powerless her whole life. And then once she starts gaining power, she doesn't really want to let it go because she likes how power feels. And I just thought that was very interesting. We don't often read about, especially women characters, who really like power for power's sake. And I don't really agree with that, and I didn't always enjoy that part of Jude, but it was very interesting to read about and definitely made her a different character to many of the other characters that I've read about. So I have such mixed feelings about this trilogy. I will probably never read it again and don't really want to own it, but I don't know, it was just really weird, and I just don't really know how I feel about it, honestly. To this day, like, I read them near the beginning of the month, and like, I don't know, it's just so different to anything that I've read in a lot of ways, but it was also very similar to other things in a lot of ways. I don't know. It was just kind of polarizing, and I don't really have strong feelings of dislike or like either way. It was just kind of, I read it, it happened, there we go. Next up, I read House of Hades and Blood of Olympus. These are the last two books in the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan, and I read them both on audiobook, so that means I finished my reread of the Heroes of Olympus series, which was so much fun. There was a lot in the last two books that happens that I had forgotten about, so it was really fun to just relive that all. I love Hazel and Frank so much. Hazel and Frank, I think, are my favorites, and Leo are my favorites of the newer characters introduced in the Heroes of Olympus series. Jason and Piper kind of bother me. I don't know, I don't like them as much, but I do appreciate like how they progress throughout the books, especially because Piper in the beginning of the series, like, she feels like a helpless girl. Like, she just has nothing except her charm to speak, and that's it. So I really appreciate, like, throughout the series, she, like, gains confidence and gains fighting ability, and with that gains confidence too. She has a really interesting character arc, and I really appreciate that. But yeah, Frank and Hazel are really cute, and I love them. And seeing both of them kind of step into their own roles is also really interesting. Of course, House of Hades is when Percy and Annabeth go through Tartarus, and so it's like, it hurts my heart to hear of all the stuff that they have to go through, but it was really cool rereading it because I had forgotten a lot of them. But I was also, I'll mention something later that has to do with that, but yeah, it was just really fun finishing off the series. I knew kind of what was happening at the very end there, so I remembered what happens to a specific character. So yeah, it was just really fun rereading them, and I'm glad that I did. And then speaking of rereading them, I was able to finish the Percy Jackson series. So I technically finished Lightning Thief at the end of December, but I'm just going to put it with all the rest of the books too. So I was reading this for the Demigod-a-thon, and there's also like a Read Riordan-a-thon that's happening throughout the rest of this year. So if you want to read the rest of Rick Riordan's books, feel free to join that. I don't really know any of the details on that because I'm not planning on doing it, but it was really fun rereading the Percy Jackson series. There's a lot of things that I had forgotten about. Like, I remember basic plot points most of the time, but a lot of the intricate details, because I read so much, and also I'm a fast reader, so I don't always pick up on the details the first time that I read a book. So it was really fun rereading this series over. I kind of got annoyed at Percy and Annabeth when they're like dancing around their feelings and kind of feeling jealous when they each hang out with Luke and Rachel. Like, I just thought it was funny that like Annabeth was getting jealous over Percy hanging out with Rachel when she was still like making all these comments about Luke and wanting to like save Luke. I know, it felt a little hypocritical, but I don't know. That angst is just very well done, and nobody does it like Perciveth, like, let's be real here. They're one of the original OTPs, always will be. So yeah, it was really fun. The other thing that was really cool was, as I was rereading the Percy Jackson series, I was listening to House of Hades and Blood of Olympus, and so a lot of, like, when I read the Heroes of Olympus series, usually it's been a really long time since I've read Percy Jackson, and so there's a lot of connections, especially in, like, the monsters that they deal with, that I forget about, because there's so many, they defeat so many, like, bad guys in the Percy Jackson series alone, that it's hard, like, I forget which ones happen in which books and in what circumstances and everything. So it was really fun while I was rereading the original Percy Jackson series to also be listening to House of Hades. And so, like, when they're going through Tartarus, there are, like, things that they notice or, like, that connect back. Like, I, like, had read, I think it's Titan's Curse, when they're in the museum and the bad guys have the teeth that then make the baby saber-toothed tigers, and then that corresponds with Small Bob in Tartarus. And so, like, it was really cool, like, making those connections and, like, actually seeing them happen, because a lot of times I just don't remember, and so, like, Percy or Annabeth will reference something, and I'm like, I have a vague memory of that, but I don't really remember what that's all about. So it was really fun, like, actually reading them and being like, oh, this is where this connects, you know? So, it was quite enjoyable, and I encourage you, if you've read both series before, to, like, do that, to read through the Percy Jackson series and, like, I don't know, listen to the Heroes of Olympus, or, like, read them side by side. I don't know. It's hard because, like, by the time you've gotten to House of Hades, you have the 5 Percy Jackson books plus the 3 Heroes of Olympus books before you get to House of Hades, where those connections really come into play. So there's just a lot of things, a lot of content, and a lot of things that happen in between there, so it's really easy to forget. So that was a really long ramble saying I really enjoyed Percy Jackson, and I have hope for whatever adaptation comes next, because it can't be any worse than the movie that we already had that we don't talk about. So yeah. So yeah, those are all the books that I read in the month of January. I had a really good time mostly rereading books, which was fine with me. But that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you have read Percy Jackson or the Folk of the Year trilogy and want to talk about it, I would love to down in the comments below. And if you want to follow me on social media, all my links are in the description as always. I'm always willing to talk there as well. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye!